All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hockey fans of the late 90s, like you now ride on that train of thought. It's time to talk about the NHL Power Rankings. Some things have changed, some things have stayed the same. There's some showdowns coming up, and we're getting closer to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's not waste any more time and get to business. As always, we're starting in Fulton, Kentucky with the Zombie Tier. Vancouver, Rossi Week. Marco Rossi, very impressive performances on his part. He scored in every game, or at least had a point in every game. There was an assist in the Nashville one that he had on a goal. The point of it is for Vancouver, though they may still be terrible, they're at least playing a little bit better. I will give them credit for. They actually won their last game 3-5-2 in their last 10, which is not bad on their part. They actually beat the defending Stanley Cup champions. And their last two games are 5-2, loss to Seattle, 5-2, win Florida. That's kind of weird, but it's the truth. We'll see what they do against the other Floridian team in the form of the Lightning, but obviously we're talking Tampa later. Calgary, kind of normal. Yeah, the Flames are kind of doing bad things and kind of being a bad team. Not Vancouver bad, but still, it's not great. It's not great for the Calgary Flames. And they aren't as lucky as the Canucks, or at least aren't as fortunate as Vancouver was over the last week or so. And they also have a 5-2 L to their name, but this time their version of it is to Detroit, which is not great. And they did at least get a Devils win in there, which is not bad over the last week, but it's kind of status quo for what the Flames season has been over the last few months. So it's rather unfortunate for Calgary. Chicago, the number one. And that's kind of the theme of the Blackhawks thus far, or at least over the last week or so. They too have had their struggles. They had a good game against Minnesota last night, losing in overtime, which was unfortunate, but it's good resilience considering how the Wild jumped on them early. The Blackhawks fought their way back but lost in OT. Okay, that's unfortunate. And in their case, they also got waxed by the Golden Knights, which is not great, but they did at least win against Utah over the last week. So the number one is for one win, one loss in overtime. The number one. Quite a thing for Chicago. New York Rangers. Trocheck didn't bounce. As you can tell, Vincent Trocheck had a very good week. He, like Marco Rossi for Vancouver, was very productive in scoring goals and getting points for the Blue Shirts up north with the Rangers. The Rangers as a team weren't as effective. They got waxed by the LA Kings, which is not great, even though the Kings are a decent team. But it was a interesting week for New York, I would say. They did beat the Wild, though. Minnesota, more on you later, but that was a really puzzling deal for the Wild. It's been a real puzzling week for Minnesota. As good as they are, it's been a puzzling week for Minnesota. Will they stay in title tier? You'll have to find out later on. Anyway, the Rangers are still relatively bad. It's just an interesting week for said Blue Shirts. St. Louis, trying to spoil. The Blues, to their credit, I will say, actually played well against playoff contenders over the last week or so. They did a very good job in their performance, which, as you can probably tell, strays away from the norm. They ended up beating Edmonton, more on Edmonton later, and they're a devastating week. And they also beat Carolina, which is impressive. They did lose to Winnipeg, which is par for the course, I guess, because Connor Hellebuck versus Jordan Binnington seemed to be advantage Hellebuck, but that's all right. It happens. So the Jets are going to be probably in this tier. You'll have to keep listening to find that out and find out where they are. And the Blues continue to struggle and kind of be sluggish down to the finish line, but we'll see where they go from here as they play the Flames next. Speaking of Winnipeg, here's where they are. They're next. The magic number. In their case, it's 3. They scored 3 goals in all 4 of their games on their homestand, going 2-1-1, which you could say, pretty good stuff. Beating the Avalanche is a pretty good statement win considering how great that offense is. Very impressive stuff. Getting waxed by the Rangers isn't awesome, or losing to Nashville is also not awesome, but at least they beat St. Louis, and a 2-1-1 4-game stretch, I guess you can take it. Adding on to the Canucks and Ducks games, where they split those two as well. All right, a countdown, 3, 2, 1 type of flow for the homestand that the Jets had in the last 6. All right, I guess we can roll with it. Now, they're not going anywhere and still need to get younger and figure things out, but at least they've made some progress over the last week. Good on you, Winnipeg. Almost called you Vancouver, but you're not Vancouver. You're Winnipeg and a little bit better than Vancouver. We're going to stay in Canada and head east to Toronto. Avenge your captain. I think the most noteworthy game from last week individually was the game between the Ducks and the Maple Leafs. And not only was it the first win for Toronto since the winter break, the Olympic break, it was also the last game that Austin Matthews not only scored in, but will play in this season, as he got run by Radko Gudas, and it caused a whole lot of drama in the third period of said game. Now, the Leafs, to their credit, did have a lot of fights and throw hands in said third period, but they weren't as urgent as they probably needed to be. March 30th, they go to Anaheim and play said Ducks. Radko Gudas got suspended 5 games for said hit on Matthews. It was not a good hit. It was a very dirty hit. And the questions have been, did Radko Gudas get suspended enough, considering he's a repeat offender? Or do the Leafs, would they rather see Gudas and try to throw hands and it's on site? Or will Toronto go after one of their skill players, Anaheim's skill guys, as Anaheim is gearing up for the playoffs? Avenge your captain. You have 2 weeks to figure it out. Good luck. In Nashville, similar to Chicago. Yeah, kind of a so-so week. Not too overly exciting, I would say. Nothing too overly terrible, I would say, for Nashville. They went 2-2, if you will. Or I guess in a more technical sense, they went 2-1-1 because there was a shootout loss in there. The point of it is, the Predators in their last 4 were kind of meh. Nothing crazy, nothing special, nothing over the top, but kind of meh. They are a little top-heavy, similar to the Blackhawks, but in the case of Nashville, their top-heaviness is 3-ish trifold as opposed to twofold, I would say, compared to the Blackhawks. Thanks to the likes of Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, and Steven Stamkos, at least, for the Predators. It's a shame that they just can't seem to get anywhere, despite all the free agent moves that they made 2 summers ago. What does Nashville do going forward here? Do they figure it out? Do they start to move some of these pieces? Can they get relief once their contracts run out? What do they even do here? I guess that's the question here. And now let's go to Birmingham, Alabama for the Monkeys Paul tier. And to be honest, I didn't think I'd say this next team in this tier or even lower than that. Florida, last place Panthers. This is very similar to me and to the NBA's Indiana Pacers in the sense of, okay, you made the finals. Obviously, the Panthers won the last 2 cups, and Indiana just made 1 Game 7 final. But the point of it is, the injuries caught up to them. The wear and tear of the playoff runs, in the Panthers' case, caught up to them, and they have cratered, and they've cratered fast. And in the case of Florida, maybe this year is good for them. Where, sure, on the scorecard and the stat sheets and the standings, it's awful. But in the sense of, okay, they probably need a couple more months off after going 100 miles an hour for 3 straight years, because they obviously made a 3rd straight Stanley Cup final. They probably need this. They probably need to take a rest of spring, all of summer off to recharge and get right back into it so they can go for the 3rd and 4th years, like I said last week. Is it possible that the Panthers are going to be in zombie tier? They may be there, and they may head there quickly. New Jersey, 0-14. Last week, I talked about how the Devils had not scored, and that wasn't necessarily fair to them because they had not played games all week. So, okay, cool. They, to be fair, were shut out before this lack of goals over the course of a few weeks. And then the Devils decided to play some actual hockey, and they actually can score some goals. The good news is they scored 4 against Calgary. The bad news is they lost. They also had some other quality performances where they scored 6 and 4 goals respectively in 2 different wins. All of these games were at home, though. So there's a decent homestand where they went 2-2 in their last, really 3-2 if you count the Rangers, 4-2 if you count the Maple Leafs going back a few games. And you can even say, because they've been home all month, adding another win, 5-2. This is not helping the Devils' tank abilities and tank efforts, but a 5-2 homestand, at least 5-2 month to start this start March, is impressive. I give them credit here. They will go to Madison Square Garden, and they're already there, obviously, as they will play the Rangers in a few minutes. Definitely puck drop will happen before when this recording is done and edited and all that good stuff. Seattle, similar to coffee. Sometimes it's good hot, sometimes it's good cold. And in Seattle's case, that's effectively what it is. Their offense is hot sometimes, their offense is cold sometimes. And that's been a run of form for the Kraken. Are they in playoff? Are they able to make the playoffs? Of course they are. They're not out of it by any means. It's just the last week, it's been hit or miss. You catch them on a good night, they'll go and win 6-2 against Florida. You catch them on a bad night, they will lose 6-2 to the other Floridian team in the Lightning. Which Kraken are we getting here? Nashville's going to find that out tomorrow night. San Jose, the number 4. In the case of the Sharks, I guess you could see the numerical themes have happened for a lot of these teams in these power rankings thus far, but it's the truth. In the Sharks' case, it's the number 4. Now, why is that? In their case, that's either the number of goals that they scored to win or lose a particular game over the last week or so. For example, they put up 4 in Boston. That was more than good enough. They put up 4 in Montreal. Also more than good enough. Both games were 4-2 wins. They also put up 4 against Ottawa. Unfortunately, Ottawa put up a 7-piece. That's not great. And even if they would have put up 4 against Edmonton, they still would have lost by a goal. That's also not ideal. So 2-2. I guess you could say that's fine. They will definitely be tested tomorrow night against a Sabres team that's on making their West Coast rounds. We'll see if Buffalo and San Jose can further their playoff pushes. Can San Jose make hay in a Pacific that is still relatively close, to be honest? Once you get past the whole Calgary and Vancouver thing, that's rather not great. We're going to stay in California with the LA Kings. Kind of successful trip. I mentioned how the LA Kings had an Acela run that they had to go on last week, where they had to play pretty much every team on the road in this that takes that particular train. I've been on it. It's quite nice. When they went to Boston, the most northern point, they lost in a shootout. Okay, they gained a point, fine. They went to Long Island to play the Islanders. They actually won that game. Good stuff. They then played the Devils. They gave up 6. That's not ideal. It was also a loss. But they did go and play the Rangers and won 4-1. So, all right, cool. They made that up. Fine. Going 2-2, not bad. Or technically 2-1-1, also not bad. They got points in 3 out of 4 games. You take that. They do play the Flyers, which is one of the other 2 Acela teams, but that game's at home. And that game's also tomorrow. More on the Flyers and their California adventures and all that later. Vegas, 6, then 6. There's some good news here for Vegas. The first of which, they put up a 6-piece against the Penguins. Awesome. In their next 2 games, a combined 6 goals were scored. 4 of them were scored by Vegas against Chicago. All right, you take that. Good stuff. But they kind of sort of got goalied by the Sabres in the next game. And what was a really entertaining one, they just couldn't put the puck in the net against Buffalo. And then Buffalo added an empty netter at the very end. But it was still a really good game for them. So 2-1 is not bad. It's good stuff here for Vegas. And they have a critical game with Utah coming up that I'll obviously get into for the Utah side of it in a moment. But it's a pretty solid week for a Golden Knights team that just needs to stay and keep pace in a very good division. Or very competitive division, I should say. Washington, non-government recess. The Capitals did not play at all over the last week. They will get off their vacation and start to play coming up tonight. And a Washington team that needs to make up some ground and needs to make some things happen ASAP. And it's a battle of capitals. I will get to Ottawa later. They play Ottawa at the top of the hour. Actually, in an hour, I should say, 7:30. So bottom of the next hour. Critical game for both teams. So I'll get to it on the Ottawa side of it in a little bit later. We'll see what Washington can do and if Washington can make up ground in a very crowded bottom of the Eastern playoff picture. And Edmonton. Life after Leon. Yes, Austin Matthews may be the most devastating injury of the week that any team had to go through. There's an easy case for Leon Draisaitl, who also has a Hart Trophy, that he can be in this class and in this particular tier. He suffered a devastating season-ending injury, lower body in his case, and he's gone for the season. It is as devastating as it gets, considering how, A, great he is, and B, how outstanding he has been in playoff form. Now, to be fair to Edmonton, they've actually still been able to put up a bunch of goals because Connor McDavid is a hockey god. And the Oilers have been relatively decent without Leon Draisaitl around. So I think that deserves some credit here. And so much so, where they've actually tracked down the Ducks, and now they're tied. And they have a Stanley Cup Finals rematch coming their way tomorrow night against the Panthers. Now, obviously, Florida is nowhere near what they were, but a Stanley Cup Finals rematch all the same. Well, the last two Stanley Cup Finals, because they ran it back and Florida won both of them. Can Edmonton get a little bit of revenge, even though there's no silverware on the line here tomorrow night at the Oil Palace? We're going to go to Wilmington, Delaware for the playoff tier, and the team closest to the Wilmington, Delaware stop is Philadelphia. California Triangle. They're about to go on a challenging road trip over in California. And for the Flyers to make it, I would have to think getting 4 of these 6 points is incredibly vital, and I think mandatory minimum for Philly to make a run to do something, anything. Now, to be fair to the Flyers, they've actually played relatively well since the winter break, 6-3-1 run, and the one was last Saturday night against Columbus, who may be the only team in the NHL better at a shootout than the Flyers are. That was still a very competitive game. The Flyers going to Anaheim first, and then LA, and then San Jose. Can they get 4 of the 6 points before they run it back against Columbus as they come back home on Tuesday? A vital stretch over in California for the Orange and the Black as they battle the only other team that consistently wears orange and black, starting the California Triangle. Anaheim is said team. They're next. Canadian mediocrity. That's where the Ducks kind of were over the last week or so. It was kind of sluggish. They had some good performances, and then there was that Leafs game where they got waxed. They went to Montreal and handled it. They got shut out by Ottawa, not great. They also beat the Ducks, and they lost to the Maple Leafs. So, yeah, 2-2. It's Canadian mediocrity. They go back across the state lines and head to California once again for the Battle of Orange and Black, which once again means that the Flyers have to face Carter Gauthier, who has been tremendous this season and has been as advertised. And the Flyers have made no hesitations in beating him up in Philly and when they can do so in Anaheim. Can Anaheim get even for the beating that the Flyers gave the Ducks not too long ago at Xfinity Mobile Arena? Needless to say, he probably, Cutter-wise, he probably won't be booed as much as he was when they played here. I would like to think that's probably not happening unless Anaheim really doesn't have a home ice advantage. Anyway, Utah generally does. 5-6. Basically, for Utah to win last week, that was the goal amounts that they actually had to score. And their other games, when they didn't score 5-6, there were 2 3-2 losses to the Blackhawks, which I don't quite recommend. And there was also a 5-0 waxing by the Wild, which I don't recommend. And also a 4-3 loss to Pittsburgh, which again, not recommended. In the games where they did score 5 or 6 goals, they ended up handling business against the Blue Jackets in a good win recently. But most importantly, I would say for their confidence, a statement win in Dallas where they put up a 6-piece. Great work. Like I mentioned before, they get the Golden Knights in what is a major battle, and it may also be a preview of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs if things line up properly. It is on the board that they do. I guess the real question will be, what is Utah going to do about this? And will it require 5 or 6 goals to make it happen? I guess time will tell on the Mammoth side of it. And currently speaking, they are actually they're tied with Vegas. So the winner of this game will move into the number 3 spot in the Pacific Division and avoiding the whole wildcard chaos that will be. Ottawa, Capital versus Capitals. Like I mentioned before, that's Washington's first game back off their break. Ottawa, however, has been really playing well. They played some great hockey lately, and a 7-2-1 run for the Senators, 7-1-2, I should say, 7-1-2 run for the Senators has them kind of in the thick of playoff contention. They have some monster games coming up, of course, like I mentioned with the Capitals and also with the Islanders, big games there. And they're coming off, obviously, the 7-piece combo that they put on the Sharks' heads. Good work there. They got some momentum, winning 3 out of 4. Good work by Ottawa. Can the Senators keep it going and show which capital is the better capital, at least in terms of being on the ice? Boston, working overtime. That's been the theme for the Bruins over the last week or so, because every single game they've had, and obviously this is good for the whole getting points thing, has been an OT game, without fail, and maybe some shootouts in there, but without fail over the last few games, last 3 games, I should say. And really, 4 out of 5, to be honest. They had a good win against the Capitals in the last game that Washington played. These are all road games, by the way. And then, obviously, the Devils game, they lost that, which is weird. But they also lost to the Ops in Montreal. More Montreal later. The monster game with the Jets coming up tomorrow, but that's a monster game for them. And we'll see if Winnipeg will continue the whole tank thing, because they tank instead of fly, I guess, for this year. Can Boston keep afloat in a very crowded bottom of the Eastern playoff picture? Pittsburgh. Malkin's vengeful return. Evgeny Malkin returned against Colorado last week, and he returned with a vengeance. He bagged 2 goals, and they absolutely destroyed the Colorado Avalanche. They put up a 7-piece on what would seem like the President's Trophy winners to be in Colorado. Now, we'll see if and when Crosby returns, and we'll see how that works. But when it comes to getting Evgeny Malkin back, huge lift for a Penguins team that is kind of in an all-hands-on-deck scenario and is still in playoff shape. They're still fine when it comes to making the playoffs, but obviously you don't want to go on a losing streak or a prolonged run of unfortunate form going into the dance if you can avoid it. And Pittsburgh thus far, as they stayed afloat without Malkin and Crosby thus far. Can they keep it that way? They're going to have to. They're currently second in the Metro portion of the playoffs, so right now they would have home ice in round 1. Detroit, big divisional test. The Red Wings are going to have a kind of divisional gauntlet coming up over the next week or so. It's a monster slate for a Detroit team that continuously needs to stack wins up. Fortunately for Detroit, all these games are at home at LCA. Great work, I guess, for schedule makers on their part. But they get all these games against Montreal, Boston, and Ottawa over the next week or so, or next 5 days, or 5 or 6 days. Showdowns all in Detroit. Now, it'll be 5 days because they start this whole stretch tomorrow. Critical situation for Detroit, and they're, I guess, in a mode similar to the Flyers in the sense where get 4 of these 6 points that are possible, and I think Detroit's in pretty decent shape. We'll see if Detroit can do it. And Columbus, simply stacking points. Columbus does not have a regulation loss in their last 10 games, and that's been incredibly vital for them. Gaining 16 points out of a possible 20 is incredibly impressive of a run for a Blue Jackets team that has really held their form for the last 6 weeks. Very impressive stuff. They basically tried to take the air out of the puck, which is kind of hard to do, but they basically tried to take the air out of the puck at Xfinity Mobile Arena, and then they beat the Flyers in the shootout last Saturday. A statement win against Carolina in their last game, and now they get the Rangers tomorrow. Surely they're going to keep this going and beat the Rangers tomorrow, right? And now we're going into New York City, Moynihan, titles here. Let's go. Montreal beat their Ops. They beat their greatest enemy in Boston. That is always a good sign to beat your greatest op. And there's nothing wrong there with the Canadiens, as they continuously look impressive and are ahead of Boston directly. And that really was the difference between where Montreal is currently in the 3rd spot in the Atlantic, which obviously avoids the whole wildcard mayhem, and they have sent Boston to said wildcard chaos. They have 2 points ahead of them, and they have a game in hand against them. Good on you. Montreal's been slightly better in terms of the last 10 than Boston, which is also good, I would say, against the Ops. And critical game, like I mentioned, for the Canadiens as they would go play Detroit tomorrow. They also get the Islanders and the Hurricanes and Blue Jackets over the next week. Critical stuff for a Montreal team that continues to show that they are not a fluke. Kind of keep it going. I guess we'll see. New York Islanders, the number 3. That's keeping up with the number theme. Thank goodness for the Islanders for doing that. New York, at least the Long Island version, has continuously played some decent hockey. They are 7-3 in their last 10. They have obviously won 2 straight, which is always good. They have put up 3 goals in each of the last 2 games against 2 Canadian teams. They won both of them, as I mentioned. They also gave up 3 to LA and lost, and they also gave up 3 to the Blues and won. All right, not bad. Still, Islanders playing some good hockey, and critical games coming up with Ottawa and then Montreal and then Columbus, some crucial games over the next few days. And over the next few days, it's a 3 games in 4-day type of swing starting tomorrow night for the Islanders. Can they keep this run of form going? Can they catch Pittsburgh and get home ice? Well, can they leap Pittsburgh because they're tied with them? Pittsburgh just happens to have a game in hand. Time will tell, though. The Islanders are still in relatively good shape. Tampa Bay, somewhat recharging. The Lightning have had a rough run of form, at least going into last week, where they were getting absolutely caved in at different points. Except for that showdown against Buffalo. That was a really fun game. There's no shame in losing that, but they've had some really tough runs of form lately. They've won 2 of their last 3. Other than the loss to Carolina, which wasn't great, they put up a 6-piece against Seattle, which was good, and then made a statement against a pretty good Red Wing team, as I mentioned. Now, surely, as they will go to Western Canada for the next 3 games, Tampa Bay can get 4 of the next 6 points, right, of these next 3 games as they go to Western Canada and end up playing Vancouver, Edmonton, and Calgary in that order. And this is another one of those 3 games in 4-day stretches. Can Tampa Bay keep their run of form, or at least get back on track? Because 3-7 in their last 10 is not great, but they won 2 of the last 3. So I guess we can roll with the more recent events. Minnesota. Explained last week. Speaking of recent events, Minnesota Wild. Question, what was this? What happened here? You face 3 teams that you have been much better than over this season at home, mind you, in the form of the Flyers, the Rangers, and the Maple Leafs. You lost all 3 of those games and only got to overtime/shootout against the Flyers. You only got 1 of a possible 6 points there, which is pretty rough. Now, yes, you did last night go and beat Chicago, your division op. Good stuff there. That's fine. It's just a really weird run of form for a Minnesota Wild team that has notoriously been pretty impressive. 3-2, 4-2, 4-2. Sounds like half of like a tennis straight sets L situation. But you got the job done last week against the Blackhawks. You will also be playing the Blackhawks in a home-and-home, but this time it's back in St. Paul. There is a showdown coming on Saturday in the form of your big brother and the Dallas Stars. I want this to be a best-of-7 so bad. I want this first-round series. I want this war between the former Minnesota North Stars and the current Minnesota Wild. I want this. I want it. I need it. Make it happen. Dallas and Minnesota, please make it happen. I get it. Dallas is still trying to catch Colorado, and Minnesota is too. But I want this war between Minnesota and Dallas in round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Carolina, 2 Penguins games. That's what's upcoming, a critical part of their schedule upcoming for the Hurricanes. As if Pittsburgh's going to have any shot of catching them in the Metro, Pittsburgh's got to probably get 3 or 4 points in these 2 games combined between tonight, as in right now, because that's when they're actually playing in Raleigh, and then Sunday they run it back in Pittsburgh. There's a Maple Leafs game there in between, but in theory, Carolina should handle that. There's a Montreal game after this, but in theory, that's a pretty good even fight, or close to even fight. Anyway, I would think that if Carolina can get 3 or 4 points here, they probably put the Metro to bed, because I'm not sure if anybody else in the Metro Division can actually catch the Hurricanes if Carolina could get these 3 or 4 points against the team that's in second. Unless there was some other collapsing happening. But I don't see that from a pretty good team in the form of the Hurricanes. Buffalo, California dreaming. And that's really where the Sabres are heading this week, as they have 3 games in California similar to the Flyers. Now, Buffalo's version of the California Triangle will start with the most northern point, San Jose. This is tomorrow. And then Saturday and Sunday, they will spend the weekend in Los Angeles/Orange County as they go and face the Kings and Ducks, respectively. Now, I would say this is the first time that all 3 California teams are all good all at once. And this is the first time that all 3 and Buffalo have been all good all at once, I would say, since the early 2010s. That's saying something. Good on Buffalo for doing their part, though, and getting a statement win last night against Vegas. That was a really good win, and somehow there were a good amount of Sabre fans that made the trip out to Vegas. Good work on Buffalo's part, and they're playing scorching hot hockey as of the last couple of weeks. Good on you, Buffalo, and good on you for getting back into the playoffs, as long as you don't completely crumble like graham crackers. Dallas, next 3 games. That is a major point of emphasis for the Stars as their quest to catch the Avalanche continues. They have played really good hockey still, and it's on the board that they catch Colorado, but Colorado's going to have to stumble a little bit more. 8-1-1 last 10 is absolutely gross. And the fact that they're still not ahead of the Avalanche, even with this 8-1-1 run, is absolutely ridiculous. Now, the one in regulation is against the Mammoth. Good win on Utah's part, but Dallas has been an absolutely absurd machine for the last several weeks as they have crushed most challenges before them. Unfortunately, the other game they did not win in this 8-1-1 run is against their next opponent that's coming up in about 2 hours. Colorado. A losing streak? Believe it or not, yes. The Avalanche are actually kind of sort of mortal, kind of sort of human. They actually have lost their last 2 games. I mentioned the Penguins game where they got absolutely obliterated and by returning Evgeny Malkin and the rest of his crew from Pittsburgh in Denver. It was not great. But the Avalanche also lost their another game in a row in the form of the Jets. So they got 2 games where they gave up 10 goals and didn't win didn't get anywhere close to overtime. That's a stunning development for what's been the best team in hockey pretty much all the way through. Now, surely, this monster game, this 4-point swing of a game that's happening tonight in Denver, it might be a Western Conference Finals preview, and it's really been Colorado's recent boogeyman in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Surely they can get home ice advantage and keep home ice advantage away from the Stars this time, right? Last 2 years, the Dallas Stars have had home ice advantage in both of these playoffs. Now, to be fair to Dallas, they won Game 6 in Denver in overtime to keep Colorado from going back to Dallas. Last year, they won Game 7 in Dallas because Mikko Rantanen went God mode and eliminated the Avalanche right then and there. So, in theory, if there is a round 3 in the last 3 years, Colorado will have home ice, right? That's what tonight's game can really help determine. And I've determined that this is the final part of these power rankings for this week. And coming up tomorrow, more power rankings. But this time, it's the NBA, as always, coming up on Thursday/Friday. Now, I will try to get this out here Thursday and have all of my final 4 picks for men and women in the NBA version of the power rankings. And speaking of how this is going to go, Indiana will be the first stop of my next Straight Up Thought.